Let's get started. In 1986-87, myself, Dr. Rkhty Amen, we started this calendar project. The purpose is to recreate a calendar for African people with African spirituality incorporated into it. I'm going to let you hear what she has to say. Dr. Rkhty Amen is the premier person in this country. If you know anybody that's reading the glyphs, most of them have studied under her. If not, they studied under her students. She started teaching the hieroglyphs, which we call the Medu Neter, back in 79, 80. And then we started I met her in 86, and this is what she has to say.
We started 1980, 87, but maybe 1986, but around that time, or even before. I will give a brief history of how you and I have worked on this calendar from the very beginning. So the project actually started in the Kemetic Institute under the leadership of Dr. Jacob Carruthers, which that institute was started very early, like 1982. I was working on this project. They put out a charge for some people to work and study the Kemetic calendar and concept of time. And so I took on that challenge. And in 1987 or 86, I met Metu in New York. And what we did was, after talking and seeing how interested he was also in the calendar, we decided to work together on it, along with another person called whose name was Frederick Reese. So what we had to do was we had to read every book that was available about the Kemetic calendar, every book. And we did. We lived in the library studying all the different books that have been written about it by the European scholars. And we also decided to put together a calendar of our own. And it was very rudimentary at first, but we did that, and we published the calendar in the Calendar Project. It's called the Calendar Project because from the very beginning, we intended it to be an ongoing research and an ongoing project pulling together people from different areas like astronomers, astrologers, physicists, which Frederick Reese was one, mathematicians, just pulling together different people because the calendar actually, or the Kemetic calendar is more than just one calendar. Seba Metu is going to explain that to you all. But it is complicated, especially when you introduce the culture into the calendar project as well, which we've done. So every day, well, not every day, but every month since 1987, quite honestly, myself and Metu have been continuously working on this calendar project. And over that time, we always are finding out something new and exploring new ideas and new aspects. Another part of this that's so important and central to the whole thing is Medu Neter, because I read Medu Neter. I have read everything I possibly can in Medu Neter on the calendar, shared it with Metu. He's very skilled at reading about the calendar in the language Medu Neter. And so that's really our main source of information, but we also have studied on our own the sky, the night sky, the astronomy, and all of it. And we're always wanting other people to come along and join the project as well. So anyway, that's just a little bit about how the calendar project got started. It's an ongoing thing. Myself and Metu have consistently been working on this, reading the Medu Neter, for example, of the Dendera calendar. We have read that and studied that over and over again. And it's fascinating, wonderful, but it's actually for the Kemetic people, it was part of their everyday life. It's part of their culture. And if we really want to uh, go into who we are, our being, our understanding of life, the concept of time and the calendar is so important. And there's no one, honestly, more qualified in every way to help you to understand the calendar and time other than Seba Metu.
All right. So out of this, out of these studies, we eventually developed the image that you see on the right-hand side. It is based, the design is based on the Denderic calendar, and it incorporates the lunar cycle, the solstices, the Kemetic constellations, the Kemetic names of the month, and the Roman names of the month. The months that we are using are Roman, not African. Okay, so if you would like to get a copy of this calendar, it is a perpetual calendar. It's good for any year. I put a link in the chat. You can click on it and then bookmark that for later. This is our story, not his story. It's not his story. This is our story from our own viewpoint. This is going to be an overview of the Kemetic Astrology class that lasts for 12 weeks, starting this Thursday, February 27th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This masterclass offers a wide-ranging exploration of Kemetic concepts and history. We will delve into Kemetic astrology, timekeeping methods, and calendars, highlighting their significance and influence. We'll examine the Kemetic cosmology, the structure of the duat, as you may know it as the spiritual realm or the inner planes. In Kemet, we use the word duat. That's what we called it. And the roles of the various Neteru, or as we know them as spiritual powers that you can tap into at any time. What the calendar does, it tells you when these energies are most applicable or available for you to tap into. We'll explore the significance of colors. We'll go delve into human genetics, world migration, and the duality of the brain, all within a Kemetic context. This masterclass offers insights into the deeper meanings and symbolisms embedded within ancient Kemetic culture. This includes the lunar cycles, planetary energies, months of the year, and their connection to spiritual practices. Ultimately, this masterclass aims to provide a holistic understanding of Kemetic thought and its relevance to human existence. Class 1, we will be unveiling the secrets of time. In Class 1, we will delve into the history of the calendars. We will explore the development of the calendars throughout history, setting the stage for understanding Kemetic timekeeping. Archaeologists a few years back have come across some megalithic structures in South Africa. Mega meaning large, lithic meaning stone. Large stone structures that look like Stonehenge, but Stonehenge came thousands of years later. These megalithic structures are said to be 75,000 years old. They have found them to be aligned with the summer solstice sunrise and sunset, winter solstice, sunrise and sunset, the equinoxes, certain stars rising at certain times of the year. This was our way of keeping in touch with the cycles that is taking place. Because in some areas of the world, such as, say, like central, I mean, the equatorial belt, the external weather doesn't change that much for you to be able to tell. Here in the Americas, because we have some people that are not from here, here in the Americas, we have a cold season and we have a hot season. And we have two in-between seasons. In some areas, they go from wet season to dry season. It doesn't get cold. It doesn't get extremely hot. The weather may stay a little stable, but it'll be either wet season or dry season. Okay. We will study the ancient global timekeeping. Oh, going back to this archaeological find, the archaeologists are having a debate on it. Either way, we still come out on top. They are debating whether it's either 75,000 years or 200,000 years old. And they found they have found 20,000 of these megalithic circular structures in South Africa. 20,000. We will go in class 1, we will go into the different types of calendars, meaning there are what's called a solar calendar that uses the sun to tell the time of the year. We have a lunar calendar that uses the moon to tell the time of the month. And we have a stellar calendar or a star calendar that deals with the errors of time, longer periods of time. All of this is incorporated into the calendar project and the calendar that I sent you folks the link to, right? The class is going to, the 12-week class, we're going to break down everything. That's where you can ask all the questions that you want. No question is too small or too big. We will delve into the Kemetic calendar and show you how we develop, our ancestors developed water clocks, right? To tell the hours of the night. We developed sundials. Most of us here have heard or seen a sundial. The Kemetians were the first to create such an object that would tell you the hours in the day. We will delve into the Greek calendars. Why are we going into the Greek when this is a Kemetic astrology? Because you have to understand that the calendar that we use today stems out of the Greeks or the Hellenes interpreting our calendar, and they took some of the Babylonian, which is the Persians, same area, and they conjoined those two together to produce their calendar. They didn't have one of their own. They took from other cultures, meaning that they didn't have a state calendar. Greeks were in what they call city-states, meaning that they were just small tribes of Greeks, and each one of them had their own system of telling time. Okay? After the Romans came and conquered the Greeks, the Roman calendar became the state calendar, and this is the calendar that we are using today. This is the Roman calendar. It is not the Kemetic calendar. The length of the year is African. The length of the year is Kemetic, but the names of the month, the spirits that you are invoking, just like sometimes we say, let's bow our head in silence for a particular fallen hero or ancestor. Every time we call out these month names, the Roman months, that means January, February, March, April, May, June. All of those are Roman names of their month system that was taken up by the Roman Catholic Church and the popes, and then superimposed upon the rest of the world. The Muslims have their own calendar, and they use the Western calendar in order to do business with the Western culture, but they have their own spiritual, religious calendar. The Hebrews, many of the cultures around the world, they may use the Roman calendar, but they have their own spiritual calendar. This is the calendar that we have created for us, our own spiritual calendar that will aid us in understanding the cycles of the months, the cycles of the day, the cycles of the year, so that we can now realign our spirit and our soul to the right time, because we're not in 2025. Why I say that? Because there was no year zero when they came up with the structure A A A D B C. There was no year zero. Why? Because zero had not been invented or brought into the European society as of yet. There was a zero in Indus Kush that got picked up by the Arabs and taken across North Africa after 645 or 642 AD. So up until that time, the European societies had no zero. There was no zero in any of their numbering systems. Matter of fact, they didn't even have a numbering system until the Moors brought that information back into Spain, which eventually got into the rest of Europe. But that's for another class. Timekeeping in Kemet. We went over that a little briefly. In class 1, we will spend a great deal of detail to deconstruct the timekeeping and reconstruct it so that you can get a better understanding. It's very holistic. The calendar that we are using today is more so a fiscal calendar, meaning it's a calendar of money management. It has no spiritual significance to African people or people of color, except that we just grew up with it and we think that this is all that there is. Class 2, we will delve deep into the Human Genome Project. This is the project that took 12 years to manifest, and the project aimed to identify, map, and sequence all the genes in the human genome. It also aimed to determine the base pairs that make up human DNA. Why will we be going into that? Because we want to show you who was doing what by where their gene pool came from. We will study the human genomes. We will study the human migration routes. We will get into genetic mutation. Okay. Now, many of you have heard this term mutation on sci-fi movies. This is an actual scientific phrase, genetic mutation. We will go into the genetic mutation of the humans to show you that historically, when we look at many of the sites and we have the archaeological dates, you will know exactly who created these by the time frame. So let's say, for instance, 75,000 years ago, there was nothing but Africans on the planet. There was no other people on the planet but Africans. So when we go into studying the South African megalithic structure, you already know that it was your ancestors that created this. That information got passed down through generation to generation to generation until it gets to Kemet. This is why some of the books that talk about the Kemetic calendar, they will tell you, we don't know where it developed from. It just seemed to pop up full blown because we didn't start it back at 6,000 years ago. And we will be going into the Helmsley classification for genetic skin types. Right? We will show you through the medical research. This is not Metu making this up. This is not wishful thinking. This is fact-finding medical research to show you when the genes and where and what area the so-called races, the so-called different people began to emerge. That had all been mapped. They call it the Human Genome Project. If you want to look it up, that's the exact phrasing, the Human Genome Project. Right here, or HGP. In class 3, we will begin to get into what we call the master key or the common denominator. This master class presents a system for understanding the temperaments, drawing upon Kemetic concepts and other disciplines. We will study and analyze what is called the objective realm and the subjective realm in detail. We will study the pairs of opposites, or as some people call it, the law of duality. So, for instance, hidden in plain sight, we use the word individual in our language sometimes. Like we might say those individuals over there. But if you understood the word individual, it's 3 words put together: in, divi, and dual. Individual. The word actually means the undivided duality. Because no matter how thin you slice it, there's always a duality. Always, in everything. We will get into the nooks and crannies to share with you how you can see the duality. Matter of fact, it's implied in everything that you do. So, like for instance, if I say some people have long hair, right? The duality of that is most people may have short hair. I'm not saying that's a true or false statement, but everything that you say has an opposite meaning to it if you really listen to what people are saying. We will go into the Neteru and their associations. The word Neter, for those of us that don't know, is what the Kemetians use to give the name to the all in all. All. See, some people have translated this word into God. This word does not mean God. The word God is actually a German word. Look it up. It's a German word. When you look it up, you want to look up the etymology of God. You find that it's a German word which actually means to invoke a spirit. It does not mean what everybody says that it means, though, one and only. We will go into human behavioral biology, and we will relate all this back to the common denominator. We will definitely study cycles. There are cycles happening right now that we're not even aware of it. But once your eyes open to these cycles, you won't be able to not see them. And we'll be studying the 4 qualities and the 4 elements. In class 4, we will be studying duality and the binary system. This class provides an in-depth study of the duality, particularly as it relates to the brain and the body, drawing connection to Kemetic concepts. We will delve into duality and the brain, duality and the body, the Kemetic connection. We will get into reading some of the glyphs, not all of them, because this is not a class on the hieroglyphics, which our ancestors called Medu Neter. The word Neter comes into the Roman as natura, and then it becomes anglicized to the word nature. The 5th class will be, we will delve into cycles in our lives. This class draws connection between the daily, lunar, and solar cycles in our everyday life, and also references the 4 qualities or 4 elements. The power of our cyclical energies, we will go into in this class. This class draws a connection between the lunar cycle and our everyday lives. The moon has been doing its thing for thousands and thousands of years. Many of us don't even look up to even take note of it. But as you can see in this little diagram on the right-hand side, the moon goes through what we call moon phases, right? That changes the electromagnetic energies coming from the moon. It's a lunar cycle. It's a cycle that happens every 28 days. We will delve into each part of the cycle so that you will know when you look up at the moon what cycle of the month, what part of the month you are in the cycle of time. So some people have projected this cyclical manifestation into an algorithm, and this is what they came up with. In trigonometry, this is called sine cosine. Many of you may have had this in school. You may have done well, you may have done bad. In this class, we will break this down to make it, to show you that it's a really simple process. Most of the time, our problems with learning is not because of us, it's because the teacher, the instructor, didn't know how to teach well. Some of us may have had a teacher. I've had one. I wasn't fortunate enough to have 2, but I had one teacher that really knew how to teach. And he was so good that nobody missed his class. Everybody enjoyed his class. Okay, next In class 5, we will go into the duat. We will go into every single level. There are 7 levels to the duat. The ba, the aku, or some people call it ku, the shekem, the eb, the sahu, the kaibit, and the kat. We will show you, we will teach you, we will inform you that everybody, everything that you see has all of these components to it, right? You will be able to identify what level that a person is functioning on by understanding the levels of the duat. These levels represent a hierarchy of spiritual development and understanding. This class draws upon Kemetic concepts and terminology, while also referencing other spirituals and occult traditions, aiming to map out the journey of the spirit and various components. Class 6, we will go deep into the planetary energies. This class, we will discuss the planetary energies drawing upon the Kemetic concepts and their correlation with daily, solar, lunar, and star cycles. One of the main stars that was used by a lot of ancient cultures, we call it Sirius. The Kemetians, the ancient Egyptians, called it Sophetet. And sometimes it's called the dog star by the Hellenes, or as you know them as the ancient Greeks, because of the time of year that this star was prevalent in the sky. It usually is manifesting just before sunrise in the month of August, July, August. They called them the dog days of summer. Those were the hot days. They were so hot that dogs couldn't even survive out in the sun. If you ever see a dog get thirsty, they will pant because they can't breathe through their pores because they have hairs in their pores. So when it gets too hot for them, they have to pant. This is called the dog days of summer. So the Greeks called this star Canis Major. Canis meaning dog, and major, which implies when you hear the word major, remember the duality. If there's a major, there's a minor. There's also a star cluster called Canis Minor. These are the Greek names. We will in this class bring to you the Kemetic African names and their spiritual significance and meanings. This class will associate the Neteru, or divine principles or forces, and planets, elements, and psychological concepts. We will delve into the planetary cycles. We will go over the elements, the 4 elements, and we will inform you of how we got the 7-day cycle. There's some ancient cultures have a 5-day week. Some had an 8-day week. Some had a 10-day week. We now use the 7-day week mainly because it is the breakdown of the lunar cycle into 4 parts. So the week that we use today is not an arbitrary, we just say, oh, we just want to pick 7 days rather than 5 because we want to be different. It stems out of the lunar cycle. So 28 divided by 7 is 4. So there's 4 parts to the lunar phase. Class 7, we will go into the Roman months and their meanings. For instance, everybody here that uses the Gregorian calendar, we know the month, the third month in that cycle coming up in a couple of days is called March. It is named after the Roman god or deity of war, Mars. It used to be the first month of the year. January and February was added on later, meaning that the Romans only had a 10-month yearly cycle. When this class provides an overview of various calendar systems used in and around the Mediterranean, emphasizing their historical development and cultural context. In this class, we will also be discussing the fictional island of Atlantis, as described by Plato. Then we will delve into the Greek calendars of the 8th century BCE, noting their lunar bases and varying starting points across the city-states. This class then moves on to the Roman calendar from 753 BCE, its evolution and its eventual modification into the Julian calendar, and highlights how Julius Caesar was influenced by the Kemetic calendar, particularly the 8th Cleopatra, which he had relationships with, even though he was married to his wife back in Rome. He had relationships with the 8th Cleopatra, and she had his nose wide open. And so with her influence, she was able to get Julius Caesar to modify the calendar to be more like the Kemetic calendar. But after Julius Caesar was killed, they abolished it. Finally, this class explains the adaptation of the Gregorian calendar in 1582, which is now the most widely used calendar in the world. Yes, that calendar that you see in your apps. Maybe you have Google Calendar. Maybe you have an Apple Calendar. Maybe you have a physical calendar on your wall. That calendar is the Gregorian calendar with the Roman names of the months. Pope Gregory enacted the Gregorian calendar in 1582. The calendar that was in use was out of sync by 11 days. In October of 1582, he decided to adjust the calendar so that in October, say October 1st, they were behind by 11 days. After October 1st in 1582 came October 12th. So according to them, nobody was born on October 2nd, 1582. It didn't exist. So the question is this the 24th of February, or are we out of sync again? We will also highlight the various Cleopatras. As I said before, there were 8 of them, and how the 8th Cleopatra played a role in the Roman calendar reform. Again, we're going into that because I want to show you that the names of the months that we are using, January, February, March, April, May, June, and so on, are Roman names for the month. They are not African. We are invoking the Roman ancestors. Not only that, after Julius Caesar passed, for the Romans, in honor of Julius Caesar, they took the 6th month and changed its name to July in honor of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar's relative, Augustus Caesar, got his name put into the calendar, and we call it August. So every July and every August, when we delve into that, we are invoking Roman ancestors. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not Roman. But maybe if I do a DNA test, they might say I was a Roman general. Who knows? Miss Cleopatra. This class also explores the meanings and the origins of the Roman months' names, providing insight into their cultural and religious significance.